Hey guys, welcome to week 3. This will be our first jump into Adobe Illustrator. We're switching programs and moving on to working with vector graphics rather than raster graphics. And I hope you guys have take the time to view that lecture that I put up. It's pretty short, just outlining the difference between the two and how they each have their place in the world of either graphics design and the visual arts. So be sure to check that out. It's good information to have. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to sort of get warmed up to Illustrator today. Take a look at the project document, but I'm just going to jump right in here. What you're going to do is launch Illustrator, and you're going to notice there's a few different things to this window when we're going to make a new document here in Illustrator as opposed to what you'd see in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit new, and just like always you can name your document. Artboards, the way Illustrator works is it allows you to have multiple work surfaces as opposed to just your one normal canvas. You can actually have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. We can set our size down here. This may look different for some of you guys, but generally you can set your units of measurement. We'll go with inches. This one needs to be 7 by 7. You'll notice that there is no place to set resolution. That's because we're dealing with vector graphics. They are resolution independent. We basically determine that resolution when we go to output this to either JPEG or whatever other graphic we're working with. Bleed, this is if we needed to have an area where the document would be trimmed down. Say we had full color all the way to the edge. We would set this up and make sure that our color went as far as that. This is more into the realm of graphics design and publication design than we're going to be dealing with. So this is all set. I'm going to click OK, and this is what I get. So this is Illustrator. Looks very similar to Photoshop in terms of its user interface. We've got tools along the left hand side. We've got different palettes along the right. We've got layers just as we normally would. So for this project, what you guys are going to be doing is doing some illustrative type. You're going to be taking a word and then modifying it in a way that sort of enhances its meaning or illustrates its meaning. So first thing you're going to need is your type tool. You're going to need to type out a word. So I think what I'm going to go with is, seeing how my phone just went off a few minutes ago, I'm going to go with vibrate. I'm going to select that up here at the top. We can adjust our font size. Or you can type it in. You can sort through and find different typeface if you need to. Or you can go online and download different ones that you can pick up from either dafont.com or Font Squirrel. A lot of different choices out there where you can go and get some free to use typefaces if you don't find one that's working for you here. What I generally recommend is not picking something that's really ornate, going with something very simple like Helvetica Neue or plain old Helvetica or Myriad Pro or Verdana, things like that where the typeface itself is very understated and you're going to be using the alterations you make to bring the type to life. So what I recommend is going with something pretty clean and simple like this. And let me just see, I'll go with regular in size. So here's my typeface. This is the word that I've chosen. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this and choose the text box. And I'm going to hold down Option if I'm on a Mac or Alt if I'm on a PC. And you're going to notice the cursor is going to change. I now have two arrows, a black one and a white one. What this is going to do is as I'm holding down Option and click and drag, I'm going to make a duplicate. So I'm going to have a copy of this off to the side just in case I need it, in case I want to step back and go all the way back to my starting point. And as you can see here in Illustrator, you can utilize this space off to the side, unlike in Photoshop where it's just sort of, it's there. You can't really do much with it. And stuff can go off to the side. You guys, if you're filling a background with color, you're going to want to overshoot that edge, and that gets trimmed off when you export your finished piece as either a JPEG or some other raster graphic. So keeping that copy off to the side, and you'll see me do that incrementally as I go through this. So what I'm going to do is move on to the next step of this. I'm going to choose my text box. I'm going to go to Type up at the top, and what I'm looking for is either convert type to outlines or create outlines. So what this is going to do is this is no longer going to be editable as type. I'm not going to be able to double click and change this around or alter the typeface that I'm using. It's going to turn it into an object. So selecting it, make sure it's selected, go to Type, Create Outlines, and now what you're going to see is there's all these little points around it. And what this has done is we've taken our typeface and moved away from a scalable vector like a typeface is, where it's restricted to the letter forms that are predetermined by the font. And now what I can do is I can come in with my direct select arrow, this white one right here, and choose one of these shapes, click on a point and drag it around and modify these letter forms. I can come in, directly select one, double click on my color down here in the corner, change the color. If I use my regular selection tool, it will select all of the words together, and I can then modify them as a whole. Or if in dealing with this I really only want to treat one at a time, what I'll do is this is a grouped set of objects. So if I choose this and I go to Object up at the top and Ungroup, it's going to break it apart so I can treat each one individually without having to go in and modify each one separately. Alright, so what I'm faced with right now is how do I illustrate the word vibrate using just this type, just the word vibrate. So one of the ways of doing that is, I think what I'm going to do is regroup this, and I'm going to make a couple copies. So I'm going to hold down Option and drag, and I'm going to make 3 other copies of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each one, and I'm going to rotate it slightly just by choosing it, going to the outside edge, and you see that curved double arrow that shows up. Click and drag. So what I'm left with is these offset copies, and what I'm going to do is select them. Oops. And in Illustrator, you can drag across multiple objects. If you hold down Shift, it will let you selectively choose or deselect one. So what I'm going to do is stack these close together. Select all of them, and I'm going to lower the opacity on these, so either up here at the top or off in a side toolbar under transparency or opacity. I'm going to drop this down, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange these on a layer underneath my actual typeface that I'm going to be working with. So I'm going to select all of these, I'm going to make a new layer, position it underneath layer 1, and then you see when I select something, this little colored square shows up next to the layer. And what I'm going to do is with this, it basically indicates all the objects that are selected within this layer. You can see layers work a little differently. They drop down into subgroups. Each object has its own sublayer, and if it's a group like this, each group has its own sublayer, in this case made up of each letter. So it just sort of breaks itself down. But what I want to do is move these onto a different layer. So with them all selected, I can grab this little colored block, click and drag it to the other layer, and you can see their outline working paths have changed color to match the color indicated by this layer. So what that does is I've moved these down to a new layer, and what I can do is modify this and lock down my top layer so I'm not accidentally grabbing that and moving that around. And what I'm going to do is just play around with this until I get something close to what I'm looking for. And if you've selected an object, you can use the arrow keys to sort of nudge the shapes around, up and down. I'm going to unlock that. I'm going to select everything. You can see this selects across all the layers. If it's unlocked, if it can get to it, it'll grab each and every one of them. And then what I'm going to do is just center this up a little bit. Step back, take a look, see what's going on. And I think that's sort of a good first draft at finding a solution for illustrating this word. Now there's probably other options out there for this as well. It could be this might work better where only a few of the letters are vibrating. Could be there's another visual solution for this. So what I'll do is, sort of take this and I'll move these all to one layer so they're right there. Select it all, object, group, and I'm just going to put that off to the side. And what I'll do is I'll go and take this, drag another copy in, take another crack at it and see if I can come up with something different. Really push it to see if I can find a version that works well. If you guys end up with a couple of these, feel free to post 2 or 3 of them. So what you'll do to say this is my finished one, this is what I'm going to deal with in terms of a final submission piece. What I'm going to do to export this is not file and save as like we would in Photoshop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File and Export, and this is where you'll find a JPEG. So be aware of that. It's not under File and Save As. It's going to be File, Export. We're going to export a JPEG. Name it as you usually would. Export it to where you keep your classwork, and then upload it from there. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Play around with this, have some fun with it. The word you choose is entirely up to you. Could be something that describes you. favorite word, could be any sort of like noun or action, things like that. Just find different ways of taking it, modifying it, playing with the letter forms and the shapes to illustrate the type and bring it to life. Alright guys, have fun.